The gene labs of Xyrith, 9 hummed with forbidden energy as Jareth followed Nixus through the pulsating crimson corridors, their footsteps echoing against walls grown from living tissue that contracted at random intervals like a giant heartbeat, the air thick with the scent of iron and something sweetly rotten that made Jareth's hybrid senses flare with warning, his pupils dilating to adjust to the flickering emergency lights that cast Nixus's face in alternating shadows of blood red and void. Black as she input override codes into the sealed door before them, her fingers moving faster than should have been possible, her usual royal composure shattered by what they'd witnessed in the Citadel's observation deck, the void-born advance, closer than either had feared, their inky tendrils already brushing against the outer rim of Dominion space, consuming entire colonies without resistance, leaving behind only silence and the occasional drifting hulk of a gutted warship, its crew reduced to frozen statues with faces locked in eternal screams. A fate Nixus had nearly suffered herself when Jareth grabbed her wrist just in time to stop her touching the contaminated transmission from Outpost Gamma, his hybrid reflexes the only thing preventing her flesh from undergoing the same petrifying transformation they'd watched consume Commander Vale in the holographic playback, his body crystallizing from the inside out in milliseconds, his final choked warning still hanging in the air between them. They're not just coming. They're already here. The memory made Nixus's hands shake as the gene lab door finally hissed open to reveal Dar. Rivel's sanctum, a chaotic fusion of Dominion technology and something far older, the walls lined with hundreds of fluid-filled stasis tubes, each containing twisted biological horrors that twitched at their presence, their malformed limbs pressing against the glass as if begging for release, while in the center of the room stood Rivel himself, his back to them, his elongated fingers dancing across a holographic display showing DNA strands that matched Jareth's own, except these were breaking apart and reforming at impossible speeds, the code rewriting itself in real time, a sight that made Jareth's stomach lurch with recognition, his body remembering before his mind could process what he was seeing, the scars along his spine burning with sudden phantom pain as Rivel turned slowly, his 4 eyes blinking out of sync, his lipless mouth stretching into something that wasn't a smile as he spoke in a voice like grinding bones. "Ah. The specimen has returned to its maker." Nixus stepped forward, her hand on her plasma pistol, her voice sharp with command though Jareth could smell the fear on her, metallic and sour. "Explain this treason, Rivel. These experiments violate every Dominion edict." Rivel's laughter echoed through the chamber, making the stasis tubes vibrate, their occupants writhing in response. "Edicts? When the Voidborn come, your edicts will mean less than the dust between stars." He gestured to Jareth with one elongated finger. "He knows. Don't you, hybrid? You felt them in your dreams, crawling through your DNA, whispering in the spaces between your thoughts." Jareth's vision blurred as the truth struck him. The nightmares that had plagued him since awakening in that EarthGov lab weren't just dreams but memories, the residual echoes of whatever process had fused his human DNA with the ancient code now unraveling before them, a code Rivel had clearly been studying for years if the dates on the holographic displays were accurate, some experiments predating Jareth's own creation by decades, a revelation that sent ice flooding through his veins even as his combat implants flooded his system with adrenaline, preparing him for a fight he suddenly realized he might not win, not against whatever Rivel had become in his decades of illegal research, the doctor's body shifting unnaturally as he moved closer, his joints bending in ways that shouldn't be possible, his shadow stretching too long and too thin across the floor before splitting into tendrils that matched the Voidborn footage exactly, the sight making Vorith snarl and crouch low, the war beast's instincts recognizing the threat even if its mind couldn't comprehend it, while Nixus drew her pistol in one fluid motion, her voice barely recognizable through the fury and terror warring in it. "What have you done, Rivel?" The scientist, if he could still be called that, spread his arms wide, his lab coat tearing along seams that shouldn't exist as something beneath the fabric pulsed with sickly light. "What you all should have done generations ago. I embraced the inevitable." Jareth's neural implants screamed a warning half a second before Rivel's body erupted, his form dissolving into a swarm of black filaments that lashed out like whips, one catching Nixus across the chest and sending her crashing into a stasis tube that shattered on impact, the fluid inside flooding across the floor in a stinking wave as she scrambled back, her armor smoking where the filament had struck, her pistol firing wild shots that severed several tendrils but did nothing to slow the main mass, now coalescing into something with too many eyes and a mouth that split vertically down its center, its voice the sound of 1,000 insects buzzing in unison. You cannot stop what has already begun. The pattern will complete. The silence will reign. Jareth moved without thinking, his body acting on instincts buried deep in his altered DNA, his hands finding the twin energy blades at his hips and activating them with a thought, the blue-white plasma casting stark light across the nightmare unfolding around them as he positioned himself between Nixus and the abomination that had been Rivel, his mind racing through possibilities even as his muscles prepared for a death blow he knew might doom them both, because the truth was now undeniable. Rivel hadn't just studied the Voidborn, he'd become them, and if this transformation could happen to one scientist on a backwater world, how many others across the Dominion had already fallen? The question hung in the air between heartbeats as the thing that was once Rivel lunged, its maw stretching wide enough to swallow Jareth whole, the last thing he saw before his blades met flesh being Nixus's horrified face as she realized the same terrible truth. This wasn't just a war coming. It was already lost. The fractured throne, sample opening, 500 words. The Citadel's doors groaned shut behind them, sealing out the storm but not the tension thickening the air between Jareth and Nixus as she led him down a corridor of black ice, the walls shimmering with embedded Dominion glyphs that pulsed like slow heartbeats, their light reflecting off Voritha's razor-edged fur as the beast padded silently behind them, its breath hot against Jareth's neck in a silent warning. A reminder that one wrong move would end with those fangs buried in his spine, but he kept his strides even, his posture relaxed, his eyes cataloging every detail, the way Nixus's armored boots left no footprints on the frost-veined floor, the faint tremor in her left hand when she input the biometric sequence to her private chambers, the flicker of hesitation before she dismissed her guards with a sharp gesture, the door hissing shut to leave them alone in a circular room where the ceiling stretched into darkness and the only light came from a floating orb of blue plasma that cast shifting shadows across Nixus's face as she turned to him, her voice low and dangerous. Show me the rest. Jareth activated his wrist projector again, the hologram expanding to reveal the Voidborn fleet in horrifying detail, ships shaped like fractured bones, their surfaces absorbing light rather than reflecting it, their movements erratic yet precise as they dismantled a Dominion battleship in seconds, the crew's screams silenced by the vacuum before they could even register their deaths, and Nixus's breath hitched, her fingers twitching toward the holo as if she could physically stop the slaughter, her voice barely audible. Where was this recorded? Jareth zoomed in on the battleship's insignia, a golden serpent wrapped around a star, the mark of the Dominion's 7th Legion. 3 cycles ago, near the Kasari Rift. Your father's advisors called it a mining accident. Nixus's fist slammed into the ice wall, cracks spiderwebbing outward from the impact, her fangs bared in a snarl. They lied. Jareth nodded, watching her carefully. The Voidborn don't conquer. They erase. And they're getting closer to Dominion core worlds. Vorith let out a low whine, pressing its massive head against Nixus's side, but she shoved it away, her eyes burning with a fury that made Jareth's neural implants flare a warning. Her bioscans showed adrenaline levels lethal for most species, yet her voice was eerily calm when she spoke. Why come to me? Why not take this to your human leaders? Jareth deactivated the holo, stepping closer until the plasma orb's light etched his scars into sharp relief. Because the Voidborn aren't just your problem. They're coming for Earth next. And the only thing standing between them and extinction, he tapped the Dominion insignia on her chest plate, is you. The world dissolved into blue-white plasma and shrieking darkness as Jareth's blades carved through the thing that had been Rivel, the energy weapons meeting resistance unlike anything he'd ever felt before, not flesh, not metal, but something that seemed to both absorb and repel the strike simultaneously, the filaments of its body parting like liquid only to reform milliseconds later, tendrils lashing around his wrists with bruising force as the creature's too many eyes pulsed with sickly light, its vertical maw stretching wider until Jareth could see down into the infinite blackness of its throat where distant screams echoed as if from some unimaginable distance, the sound making his bones vibrate with primal terror even as his hybrid physiology fought to compensate. his muscles burning with unnatural energy as he twisted free and brought both blades down in a scissoring motion that severed the main mass of the creature clean in half, only for both sections to immediately regenerate into smaller but fully formed duplicates that attacked with renewed frenzy, one latching onto his leg with needle-like appendages that punched through his armor like it was paper while the other wrapped around his throat, its grip like a vice slowly crushing his windpipe as spots danced in his vision and his neural implants screamed warnings about oxygen deprivation and critical system failures, his body's enhanced healing factors overwhelmed by the sheer wrongness of the Voidborn biology now assaulting him, the creature's voice slithering directly into his mind now, bypassing his ears entirely as it whispered in a language he shouldn't understand but somehow did, "You are fragment. We are whole. You will be consumed and made perfect." Across the ruined lab, Nixis dragged herself upright using a shattered stasis tube for support, her armor's left pauldron cracked open to reveal lavender skin beneath now streaked with black veins where the creature's filament had struck her breathing ragged but her hands steady as she raised her plasma pistol and fired 3 precise shots into the mass-constricting Jareth's throat, the superheated bolts causing the Voidborn matter to recoil with an ear-splitting shriek that shattered every remaining glass surface in the room, the momentary distraction giving Jareth just enough time to activate his armor's emergency pulse function, a last-resort EMP burst that should have been lethal to any normal biology but merely stunned the creatures for precious seconds as they writhed and bubbled like tar on a hot surface, their forms losing cohesion just long enough for him to roll clear and grab Nixis's outstretched hand, her fingers slick with some unknown fluid but her grip iron strong as she pulled him toward the lab's emergency exit, her voice raw with pain but clear with command, "Move." Before the rest was cut off as the 2 Voidborn fragments slammed together and reformed into something even more monstrous, its new body sprouting dozens of whip-like appendages tipped with hooked barbs that lashed out in every direction, shredding equipment and sending sparks flying in cascades of blue fire, the creature's central mass now bulging with what looked like half-formed faces pushing against its surface as if trying to escape, their mouths open in silent screams that made Jareth's teeth ache, their anguish somehow transmitting directly into his nervous system in waves of nauseating feedback that nearly dropped him to his knees before Nixis grabbed the back of his armor and hauled him through the closing emergency door, the reinforced alloy slamming shut just as a barbed tendril speared through the narrowing gap, the tip stopping less than an inch from Nixis's left eye before the door's hydraulics severed it with a wet crunch, the amputated appendage thrashing on the floor between them like a beheaded serpent as black ichor pooled around it, the substance smoking where it contacted the metal flooring and giving off a scent like burning hair and rotting fruit that made both of them gag, their backs pressed against opposite walls of the cramped maintenance tunnel as the door behind them shuddered under repeated impacts, the creature's enraged shrieks muffled but still painfully audible through the thick metal. Nixis's breathing came in ragged gasps as she examined her infected arm, the black veins now visibly pulsing beneath her skin, creeping slowly toward her elbow. "We need to get to my ship," she managed between clenched teeth, her amber eyes gone glassy with pain but still focused. Jareth reached for his medkit, only to find it destroyed during the fight, the contents a melted mess of plastics and chemicals. "You're infected," he stated bluntly, his enhanced vision detecting the unnatural heat signatures radiating from her wound. "With whatever that thing is." Nixis barked a laugh that turned into a cough, black spatter hitting the tunnel floor where it sizzled ominously. "Observant, for a human." Another shuddering impact shook the door behind them, a visible dent now protruding inward. Jareth made a decision. Gripping her uninjured arm, he pulled her down the narrow passageway, their boots splashing through unknown fluids leaking from ruptured pipes as emergency lights strobed overhead, casting their flight in disjointed snapshots, Nixis's silver hair matted with sweat and blood, the creeping black veins in her arm, the way her left leg now dragged slightly as the infection spread, her Dominion physiology clearly struggling and failing to fight off whatever mutagenic horror Rivel had become. The tunnel branched unexpectedly, and Jareth hesitated, left toward what his armor's damaged scanners indicated might be a hangar bay, or right toward deeper laboratory levels where Rivel's notes suggested he'd stored primary specimens. Another thunderous impact from behind made the choice for them as the emergency door finally gave way with a shriek of tearing metal, the sound of the creature oozing through the breach sending them stumbling left without discussion, Jareth practically carrying Nixis now as her breathing grew more labored, her infected arm hanging limp at her side, the fingers already beginning to twist into unnatural shapes. "Your ship. Armed?" Jareth grunted as they rounded a corner to face a sealed security gate. Nixis nodded weakly, her good hand fumbling at her belt to produce a security chip slick with her own blood. Class 7. Orbital Striker, Modified. She coughed again, more black fluid. "Keys, in my boot." The security gate slid open just as a wet, slithering sound echoed from the tunnel behind them. The creature was gaining. Jareth didn't look back, focusing instead on the dim red lights of the hangar ahead, his armor's remaining systems calculating trajectories, fuel burn rates, possible escape vectors, all while Nixis grew heavier in his arms, her body racked with tremors as the infection spread. The hangar doors were sealed, but Nixis's security chip got them halfway open before jamming, leaving just enough space to squeeze through sideways into a cavernous space dominated by her ship, a sleek Dominion interceptor with the distinctive forward-swept wings of Royal Guard design, its black and gold hull scarred from countless battles but its engine ports humming with ready power. "Voreth." Nixis whispered suddenly, her head lolling against Jareth's shoulder as she remembered her war beast still trapped in the lab complex. Jareth adjusted his grip on her, his voice firm. "Gone. We have to go now." He felt more than saw her nod weakly in understanding as another sound froze them both, not from behind, but from above. Looking up, they saw the hangar's ceiling vents disgorging thick black streams of void-borne matter, the substance flowing like sentient oil across the metal surfaces, forming into dozens of smaller versions of the creature they'd just escaped, all those too many eyes fixing on them in unison as a single voice echoed from every dripping maw at once. The pattern must complete. Jareth ran. The wind screamed across the glacial plains of Xyrith 9, a planet so cold its oceans were frozen into jagged mountains of blue steel, where Commander Jareth Vale stood motionless, his hybrid armor, a fusion of human engineering and something far older, humming softly against the storm's wrath, the visor of his helmet reflecting the twin suns in fractured shards of gold as he scanned the horizon, his enhanced pupils dilating to pierce the swirling ice fog that obscured everything beyond 10 meters. His breath steady despite the sub-zero temperatures that would have flash-frozen an ordinary man's lungs in seconds, his genetically altered blood pumping a unique antifreeze compound through his veins, a secret gift from the long-dead race that had spliced his DNA, a truth buried so deep even the Dominion's best interrogators couldn't carve it out of him, and then he saw her, Princess Nixis of the Stellar Dominion, astride her war-beast Voreth, the creature's crystalline fur rippling like liquid. Diamond in the pale light, its 6 eyes locking onto Jareth with predatory focus, its breath forming clouds of frost that crackled in the air like static discharge, while Nixis herself seemed carved from the very ice of the world, her lavender skin glowing faintly against the black and gold battle armor that clung to her like a second skin, the sigils on her pauldrons pulsing with a rhythmic energy that matched the slow, deliberate way she tilted her head, studying him as one might study a fascinating insect, her voice cutting through the storm's howl like a vibroblade through flesh. "Human," she said, the word laced with amusement and something darker, "kneel, and I'll make your death quick." Jareth didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't so much as shift his weight, he just grinned, the expression hidden behind his helmet but audible in his reply, "Funny. I was about to offer you the same deal." Nixis went very still, her silver eyes narrowing, the air around her war-beast shimmering with sudden heat as Voretha's claws flexed, gouging trenches in the permafrost, the creature's growl vibrating deep enough to tremor the ice beneath Jareth's boots, but he held his ground, his armor systems analyzing the beast's biology in real time, cross-referencing with the fragmented alien database in his neural implants, identifying weaknesses, tendons behind the third knee joint, a vulnerability in the secondary esophagus, a sensitivity to certain sound frequencies, but he didn't act, not yet, because Nixis was sliding off Voretha's back with the lethal grace of a duelist, her obsidian armor clicking like a scorpion's tail as she circled him, her nostrils flaring as she inhaled his scent, her brow furrowing when she detected the anomaly, the wrongness in his biochemical signature, the way his pheromones didn't match any human or Dominion subspecies on record, and that was when she paused. Truly pausing, her voice dropping to a whisper only his augmented hearing could catch, you're not like the others, she said, her breath warm against his helmet's visor, her fingers hovering near the weapon at her hip but not drawing it, not yet. You're sent, it's alive in ways humans shouldn't be. Jareth exhaled slowly, deliberately, watching as his breath fogged the space between them, his neural interface feeding him data, her pulse rate, the dilation of her pupils, the minute tension in her jaw, all signs of curiosity, not rage, and that was the opening he needed. Let's talk inside, he said, tapping his wrist guard to project a hologram of a Dominion outpost being consumed by an inky blackness that moved like liquid shadow. Your beast looks hungry, and I'd hate to ruin his teeth on my bones before you see this. Nixus's eyes flicked to the hollow, then back to him, her lips parting slightly, the first crack in her regal composure. What is that? She demanded. Jareth's smile turned grim. The reason I'm here. The reason your Dominion should be afraid.